Good afternoon. I am pleased to present to you this paper which will highlight the lessons and experiences in the establishment of rainwater harvesting facilities in upland farming communities in Albay province. This is a capacity development project which ran for 18 months and was funded by the Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research or APN, and it was implemented jointly by the UPLB Institute of Agroforestry and the Bicol University College of Agriculture and Forestry, of course in close collaboration with the local government units and farming communities in selected municipalities in Albay province. So, studies and literature and even actual experiences have shown that indeed the upland farming communities in the Philippines and in other developing countries are among the vulnerable sectors to the impacts of climate change. And primarily, this is because their agricultural production is generally rain-fed, and therefore any change in the rainfall pattern would certainly influence or affect their agricultural production activities. So water scarcity is most felt during the dry season. Second, their farms are in marginal upland areas with steep slopes that are prone to soil erosion. These and other concerns and problems that are brought about by climate change were articulated by the upland farming communities in Albay province in the study that was conducted in 2018. And the research results gave way for the conceptualization of this capacity development project, which primarily aimed to enhance the knowledge and skills in rainwater harvesting, agroforestry, and soil and water conservation, establish rainwater harvesting facility as a strategy for climate change adaptation, and initiate partnerships among the local stakeholders, namely the local government units, farming communities, and state colleges and universities. So we have three project sites, one in Barangay Malama in Ligao City, one in Ginubatan, Barangay Palanas, Ginubatan, and Barangay Balinad in Pulangi, all in the province of Albay. So what are the development processes or capacity development processes that we have undertaken? Of course, we had a project stakeholders orientation. It was done not only to discuss the methodologies and deliverables, but also it provided a venue and opportunity to form the local project facilitating team, which is comprised of the representatives from the LGU and the farming communities, and of course, BOCAF, no, uh, this local project facilitating team served as the core group that facilitated the project implementation of the field level. We also organized cross-farm visits to provide the farmers an opportunity to see and observe for themselves how rainwater harvesting, agroforestry, and soil and water conservation are being practiced by farmers in the adjoining communities or barangays. We also had the participatory site selection and planning for the establishment of the rainwater harvesting ponds, and this was done, of course, through the active engagement of the community members, particularly the key leaders. So they were highly involved in the identification of criteria for the selection of farms where these ponds would be established, and among the criteria include the number of farmers that would benefit from the ponds or rainwater harvesting facility, the willingness of the farmer to serve as farmer cooperator and to share their water resource with the other farmer beneficiaries within the cluster, accessibility of the farm where the ponds would be established, and the ownership of the land. We also had an on-site training and consultation, particularly on the design and establishment of rainwater harvesting ponds, and this was provided by the technical experts from the Department of Agriculture in Region 5. Other farmers who are engaged in agroforestry and soil and water conservation were also taught to train the upland farmers in these three project sites. We also encourage the participatory establishment of rainwater harvesting ponds and the integration of agroforestry and soil and water conservation. This was done through the collective action or bayanihan system of the upland farmers. So they were able to construct 11 harvesting ponds, 2 in Ginubatan, 4 in Ligao, and 5 in Balinan. Meanwhile, periodic monitoring was done mainly by the locals, particularly the youth leaders and the agricultural technicians. So these locals were tapped especially during the period, no, when COVID-19 cases have escalated and travels were highly restricted. So what have been the contributions of these rainwater harvesting facilities in the agricultural production of three upland farming communities? Okay, so in Barangay Palanas in Gunubatan, the farmers used to cultivate rice in one cropping season only, no, during the rainy season from May to November because of the unavailability of water. But when the rainwater harvesting facilities were established, the farmers began cultivating the rice in two cropping seasons, no, from year 2020 to 2021 because of the availability of rainwater. Similarly, one farmer in Ligao has expanded his area of rice production, while the other three cooperators have practiced crop diversification because of the availability of water. In Pulangi, the farmer cooperator began cultivating the idle lands, again because of the availability of rainwater throughout the cropping season. So what have been the lessons of our capacity development project? First, the cross-farm visits and on-site training on agroforestry, rainwater harvesting, and soil and water conservation that were organized by the team served as a mechanism for the farmers to appreciate and recognize the workability of these technologies. And these were actually served as facilitating factor, no, in the adoption of these uh, technologies in their farms and in their communities. Second, the establishment of rainwater harvesting facilities is site-specific. There's no standard size, type, and even process in establishing rainwater harvesting ponds in the three upland farming communities. The size and type of rainwater harvesting ponds depend on the existing local conditions, particularly the size of the farms being cultivated by the farmers, the dominant crops that are being cultivated, as well as the geographical conditions of the community and the farms and the number of beneficiaries that would use the resource. Of course, another important factor here is the willingness and the commitment of the community members to engage in the establishment of these rainwater harvesting ponds. Third, the spirit of collective action or bayanihan system is essential in a more efficient establishment of rainwater harvesting facilities. So this element is actually essential, particularly for development projects such as ours, which is actually in the pilot stage and has a limited funding support, and hence the harnessing the active participation and collective action of the farmers is really essential. Imagine through their bayanihan system, the farmers were able to establish two ponds in Ginubatan with a dimension of 30 meters by 10 meters by 2 meters, which can collect around 600 cubic meters of rainwater. Four in Barangay Malama with a dimension of 10 meters by 8 meters by 2 meters, which can collect around 160 cubic meters. And five in Barangay Balinad with a dimension of 5 meters by 7 meters by 2 meters, which can collect around 75 to 80 cubic meters per pond. Next, resource sharing is an important ingredient in any community development project, and it serves as a mechanism to develop a sense of project ownership among the stakeholders. Fifth, addressing the expressed or felt need of the communities guarantee their commitment and engagement in the project activities. Since agriculture is their main livelihood, the three upland farming communities were in dire need of water resources that will provide irrigation to sustain their agricultural production even during the dry season. This need was expressed in 2018, and since the project inception, the farmers and the local leaders have extended their support and active engagement in the project activities. Despite the pandemic and the natural disasters brought about by typhoons in 2020, the farmers were persistent and completed the establishment of these rainwater harvesting ponds. Six, functional rainwater harvesting ponds facilitates the development and adoption of agroforestry technologies and enhance agricultural production. So the integration of soil and water conservation measures, as well as the integration of agroforestry, uh, was of course done because of the opportunity to tap rainwater from these rainwater harvesting ponds, which can be used now to irrigate their crops. So this serves as an opportunity for them to intensify or diversify their crop production. Seventh, support of the local government units at various levels help facilitate the smooth project implementation in the three project sites. Eight, regular communication of the project collaborators via electronic mail and other forms of social media is a key to sustain the project implementation. So indeed, the diverse means of communication ensured that the project implementation is on track and issues and problems arising from the project implementation are immediately being addressed. So despite the pandemic, the project collaborators and the local partners were able to communicate the issues and concerns. So thanks very much to Facebook, to Zoom, and other social media platforms for making this communication possible, even during the pandemic. Next is stopping the locals as the local or on-site monitors is both capacity development and a project facilitating opportunity, as I have mentioned earlier, during the height of COVID-19 pandemic, no, the on-site monitors, no, the locals served as the link between the farmers and the collaborators, uh, and they also coordinated with the collaborators for the logistics and technical concerns and monitor the progress of these rainwater harvesting facilities. So these monitors were also taught to conduct, as I have said earlier, periodic monitoring using the monitoring tool that we have developed. So engaging them not only facilitated the project implementation, but also provided an opportunity for them to enhance their capability in coordinating, monitoring, and communicating uh, any aspect of project implementation. So this is a good training for these youth leaders. 10th, documentation of lessons and experiences in this rainwater harvesting project is essential in paving the way for project replication. Our team has produced a guidebook which highlights the lessons and experiences in the establishment of rainwater harvesting facilities in the three upland farming communities in Albay province. So this was done uh, primarily to serve as a reference for other development organizations who may wish to replicate or adopt these technologies in the other upland farming communities. And of course, this guidebook would not have been published if not for the process documentation that was conducted by the project team. So what are the conclusions of these capacity development projects? So establishing rainwater harvesting facilities in the upland farming communities in the Philippines is indeed viable and workable. However, there are certain mechanisms which should be in place to be able to facilitate establishment and sustained management of these facilities. And these include first, multi-sectoral collaboration, of course, active engagement of LGUs, who are the providers of basic social services, and they have also the capacity to institute local policies. Of course, State College, who is the provider of technical expertise, and the farming communities, who are at the core of these development interventions. Second is the collective action of the farming communities. Capacity development is necessary at all levels. So as much as possible, the engagement of other farmers through farmer to farmer training is an essential component of capacity development process. Then tapping the locals as part of the monitoring team, integration of sustainable land use management system for a more holistic area development, and resource sharing. So what are the prospects of this capacity development project? Of course, this is just an 18-month project, and further studies can be undertaken as regards the efficiency of the water utilization and distribution of the ponds to the crop fields. Studies on the evapotranspiration rate and underground seepage of the 11 rainwater harvesting ponds could also be explored. And then an impact assessment can also be conducted perhaps after 3 years of the pond establishment and utilization, so we still have a year, to be able to assess how these facilities contribute to the agricultural production of the farming communities, as well as to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of the facilities, including the mechanisms of maintenance, utilization, and distribution of rainwater to farmer beneficiaries. Okay, so finally, we would like to acknowledge, of course, the Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research for the funding opportunities. Of course, Bicol University College of Agriculture and Forestry is our main collaborator, as well as the representative from the Institute of Renewable Natural Resources of UPLB College of Forestry and Natural Resources, the staff members of the Institute of Agroforestry, the local government units in Ligao, Ginubatan, and Pulangi, and of course to the active upland farming communities in these three municipalities. So thank you so much. That ends my presentation.